of, of what you feel.
The world should be here.
The world
Okay,
should
can I
be.
ask back, because I said something about integration and segregation, and I truly think that the black population has integrated. We participate in white organizations, we go to exhibits that, we go to Monet exhibits, we do all of that stuff as part of the way of showing support for art in general, in particular. But I don't think it's reciprocated. When our institutions, when we were segregated as a community, and we could not go into white churches except in special places, like in assemblies above or whatever, or way towards the back or on the left-hand side or whatever. The fact of the matter is, our institutions, our supermarkets, the places where we shop that supported our community, that nurtured artistic and this kind of very healthy situation in our communities changed. As soon as we were able to move out to the suburbs and all of those other things, it wasn't reciprocated. And so I think the responsibility is not necessarily with us, because we don't have that big numbers.
And,
It's not up to
and
us to
I am thinking in terms of sitting on your board, who can speak for you, maybe just having, and I don't know, it may exist already, having really
We do
broad.
have white people on my board, and they're very concerned, and they're very active, and they're very dedicated, and so forth. But we need to be seen as an important part of, like, Black History Month, February comes around, everyone gets very concerned about the arts and the black community and the history of black folks and so on. But how, there's still people from this thing, so we don't get enough of that here, we want you to give it to us. And unfortunately, we're boxed up. I don't know what we're gonna do for Black History Month this year unless we find a place where we can open up those boxes and put stuff back on the shelves where they belong, so people have access to them. But regardless of that, what's key and what's important is that knowledge that we participated as a people in the Revolutionary War that made this American country possible goes unheard of. There's no state text. There is no state acknowledgement of the role of black people in whatever institutions we participated in. So I have to acknowledge today the work that the Pressing On has done through Claude Elliott to start documenting our successes, our failings even. Because what we want to do is show that regardless of how many times we have fallen, regardless of how many times accidentally or consciously or unconsciously we have been put down, or we've been trying to be, that the larger community have tried to oppress, we have not been oppressed. That spirit is vital and continues to create regardless of the circumstances. And I'll shut up now. But,
Can we hear from,
I'd like to answer Donna's question, just very briefly.
okay, sure.
I think the drum is a mighty thing, and I really thank everyone who came tonight, because I think they heard the drum beat. I produce theater, and sometimes I'm afraid that there'll be more people on the stage than in the audience, but tonight is a good thing. All of that said, Rights and Reason Theater happens to be multicultural by default, not by design at all. Personally, I like being African American, Negro, Black, any of those kinds of names fit me fine. And that's one reason why I came to Rhode Island to work at Rights and Reason, because it was a black theater doing black work by black artists. But to go back to Rose's point, if white people didn't come to see our work, we wouldn't have an audience at all. And even when we work with students, community people, and professional people, professional people will come whenever we can pay them. That's no problem. The community people are sort of iffy. And the student population that's mostly interested in our work is not necessarily African American. We have more non-black students knocking down our doors, and I mean knocking down our doors to work at Rights and Reason, than we do black students or African American students or other students of color. We will work with anybody who wants to work with us, that makes us now very, very multicultural, very, very multiracial, multi-everything, very PC, but it certainly wasn't by design.
I think that the question is kind of being pointed or asked to the wrong group, because, and I feel like it's linked to this exchange that I had with a white person who happens to be Jewish, who sits on my fund development committee. Took me out to lunch, asked me if I went to URI to see Coretta Scott King, and I told him I wasn't there, and he said, well, I think it's a bad idea that they're opening up a building for African American students and Latino American and Asian American, but it's mostly for African American students and faculty. I think it's a bad idea that URI would open up a building that would segregate that population. I also think it's a bad idea that there be a separate black theater. I think your theater is a bad idea. This is somebody invited to sit on my fund development committee to raise money. This is what we do when we bring people to the table more than any of these other organizations do. And so I say to him, so, okay, you think it's a bad idea that the black rep exists, you feel like it's separatist, which it's not. I said, are you familiar with the, and he's from here, I said, are you familiar with the Hillel House on Brown's campus, because I know he's from here? And he says, yes, I see where you're going, but that's not the same thing. Hillel House is kind of a religious, and they said, no, okay, you're right. And I said, are you familiar with the Jewish Community Center? And all he did was sit back and say, okay. And it wasn't a question of me one-upping him in that conversation, but how come he could not understand when we do the same thing that anybody else does, when we create institutions, when there have been studies, like Karen said, that my theater is more diverse than any theater in this city. Our theaters have more diversity than any of the other theaters. We don't have the numbers, but we have more diversity. My board is more diverse than any board in this city. So I really think that question should be asked to somebody else, not these people at the table.
No, I asked the question because I wanted to know, and you've answered the question. I don't have problems with I certainly understand what it is to be black and to want your voice to be heard. Now, you have to, a lot of times, establish an institution of your own in order to do that. I certainly understand that.
And I think
But I think maybe trying to use that, again, jumping through a hoop, but using that to your advantage.
I think it's important for us to understand that we also need to volunteer and work with these organizations. I think there are a lot of projects, and I know Karen and I just finished working on a project, but we kept thinking we needed more volunteers to help us do this. And I think if the Black Heritage had more volunteers from our own community involved in the day-to-day running of the organizations, then maybe in a sense we could begin to build those kind of networks that are needed to make those organizations survive. I think we need to sort of give back to our organizations. I think that's very important because nobody else will.
Can I say something? Because I'm sitting over here itching, please. How can you be diverse when you don't have a collective African American voice? I have to agree with Don with the fact that every time you come with a black theme that's Afrocentric, African American, you always have to defend it. You always have to defend it. Why is that? You can't have diversity and inclusion unless you allow people to be what they are. It all goes back to power. In Rhode Island and in southern New England, there is this underlying invisible hand that wants to repress and suppress and keep everyone at each other, and then pose these questions like, why can't we all get together? Well, can't you see it's more systematic than that? It's like, is there besides a black artist, is there really an active part from white philanthropists, from Asian philanthropists that say, you know what, the black artists in southern New England are getting screwed. And why is it that every other part of the country, you see black artwork everywhere? But you come to little southern New England where they have this renaissance, right, which is a big joke, right? I'm sorry, it's a joke because it's not inclusive. It's not inclusive. It's not inclusive. And I'm saying you can't have diversity until you let each person and each artist be what they are. And then that's not happening with the African American community. And like I said, when I left here with nothing, I couldn't get a break here. And I left the United States, the continental United States, and my career blew up. Because I knew I was good, and I knew I had what it took,